know if you have any particular questions about that. Now, during the session, Kelly is also on the call, and she'll be answering any questions that end up in the chat section. Go ahead and familiarize yourself with that chat section. You can enter questions there directly. And then we'll probably have plenty of time on the other end if you have specific questions you want to ask. And if you come across a question that you think doesn't really fit this forum, it's a longer or more detailed or more specific question, don't hesitate to send that to me. I'll follow up with you individually and get you all the answers and information you need. So I'm standing in front of a dual fuel 48 new generation range. Now, what's really interesting about the dual fuel range, it is the Clydesdale of our class. It is the most commonly selected range that we have. And it's because of its ability to be as flexible as any cooking surface on top, as well as the power and dependability and accuracy of electric ovens underneath. So that's why it's dual fuel. Electricity feeds the ovens underneath, and you have gas that works all of the flexible options on top of the range. So we'll talk about those configurations and what this range is available as. And we're going to kind of put together a little quick meal while we're doing it. So you'll see me cook on the griddle, you'll see me cook on the char, and you'll see me cook on one of the burners. I have some carrots in the oven. It's a little roasted carrot. It's a very simple lunch meal, but I want you to see some of the pieces in motion. So I want to start with what can happen on top of the dual fuel range. In addition to dual stack burners, which I'm going to come back and talk about in detail in just a second, you also have the ability for a griddle. What I'm standing in front of here is a double griddle configuration. Give you a little bit closer look at that. It is, in this case, it is a about 24-inch square griddle. It has a removable trough in the front for you can scrape any of your food items in there, or when you're cleaning it, that comes to the front. And then you can cook from the entirety of this surface. We'll come back and talk a little bit more detail about that when we're searing some scallops. You also have the ability to have a char installed. And so I want to go around and take a quick look at what that char looks like. Now, this is on the new generation dual fuel. I do not have one live in the showroom. So this is an image of what the char looks like on the existing legacy models, or the seal range gas tops. At this point, they're all the same. And this is, we're going to cook something back here in just a second, but I want to show you what this model looks like. One of the new features of the new dual fuel range is a complete control of this char. You have both a range of from low to high, so it's a variable cooking surface, which is one of the key things they wanted to bring out in this range. So I'm just going to put a couple of pieces of zucchini planks on here. I think this range is very well suited for things of a little bit lighter fat nature. So I love cooking vegetables on here, seafood, chicken. It is great for grill bread and those kind of things. I don't particularly like to use it for a big, thick, fatty cut, something like a big, thick ribeye or a burger, just because of the amount of smoke that's going to be generated inside your space. I think you'll tend to be a little more pleased with its functionality with those items that are a little bit leaner. So certainly vegetables, fruit, seafood, chicken, lean cuts, even a pork tenderloin possibly. It's just when you think about something you cook on the grill that has a lot of fat in it, and that fat dripping down and generating smoke in your space, even with a great vent, you're going to end up with a little bit more smoke than you may be interested in. So we're going to let those go for a second, get some nice grill marks. We'll come back around to the char side. And let's talk about this dual stack burn a little bit. Sorry for the whirlwind tour in the kitchen. The char, the griddle is about a 1/2 inch thick piece of alloy steel. It's very, very flat. And the thermostat in this unit runs from the very front to the very back in a groove very close to the surface of the griddle. And the reason that's important is one of the main things when you're cooking in a large saute pan or a skillet is if you overfill it, you tend to cool the pan down. And as soon as the pan is cool, it does not do as good a job in searing. You become doing a little more steaming as opposed to sauteing. And so this, giving this much space means you have a really hard time overcrowding this or loading it to the point that you're not going to continue to get a great sear. We're going to cook some scallops on here in just a few minutes, and you'll see that ability to get nice char on those scallops from the front to the back. Okay, so those two configurations in the middle, dual fuel ranges come in a 30, a 36, and a 48, and a 60. And all of those can have different configurations on top. The 30-inch typically is just 4 burners. The 36 has the ability to either have a char or a griddle in the center. 11-inch, this is a double, it would be a single wide. And then the 48, you can either have a double griddle or one of each of those surfaces, or just one of them, or you can choose a French top. Now, a French top is a different style of top. It looks much like a griddle, but is all about cooking in a very traditional French kitchen where you might have 4 or 5 pans of different items simmering at the same time. And a French top has a very high heat in the center and radiates to the outside. So I don't have a French top here live. If the French top is something you're really considering, I would encourage you to reach out and let's have a conversation and talk about how it functions and how it works and see if that meets the way you cook. Let's return back to our char now. Take a look at these zucchini that we're going to use just on top of our little mixed salad plate. I want to see if we've gotten some nice grill marks here on these. Look at that. Oh yeah, that's really nice char. So you can see something like this is not a very long process on this grill. It's a very quick to get those nice char on there. There is a spot with that control one from low to high, you'll be able to do things in different places. It has a much nicer liner on the inside. It's the same porcelain coated that is in the bottom of our burners, so it's easier to keep clean. And the grate is coated, so it's easy to keep clean as well. They do recommend, and I can give you some cleaning recommendations once you end up with this piece in your kitchen. Be happy to give you what Wolf recommends on cleaning these items. I'm going to go ahead and pull these zucchini planks off. We've got really nice char and color to them. They'll show up nice in our little salad plate. Okay, let's talk gas burner. So I'm standing here in this dual fuel 48, and you'll see that the burner configuration, the left rear is always your smallest. The left front is always your largest, and then the other two are very close in size. I'm going to take this grate off so we can take a look at the burners themselves. Let's snug in on that burner just a little bit so you get a better sense of what it looks like. All Wolf burners are dual stack burners. And what we mean by that is there is gas that comes into the unit, splits into 2 gas lines. One feeds this lower ring of holes, and the high pressure side feeds these higher upper band of holes on this burner. So we have low pressure down here and high pressure up here. And what's important is when you go to turn it on, every single burner, not just some of them, have a high to low, and then you push the knob in and you achieve a high to low on the simmer side. The high side functions in these upper holes, and then that low side functions in these lower holes of this mushroom burner cap. So let's take a look at what that looks like. There's our sear. Beautiful, high, even flame, even in all the areas. However, we only cook on sear about 5% of the time. We don't sear eggs, we don't sear soup. There are things that absolutely we need to sear for, but we don't need it for every single element. So Wolf was very intentional in designing this burner so that you ended up with this complete control through the high range, all the way down to there. And you're still coming out of those upper holes. I know it's a little harder to see with the lighting, but you're still coming out of the top. And then when you push this knob in, it extinguishes that top band and lights the lower band. And then it goes all the way down to this piece. And I know it's very hard to see that low flame, but there you can just see a piece of it. And this on every burner is 300 BTUs. And 300 BTUs is low enough I can hold my hand here without feeling uncomfortable for quite a long time. And what that means is you can do things with this burner that you can't do with the traditional because it's so controllable. You'll also notice that that doesn't ignite and re-extinguish. It stays solid, low heat. So low, in fact, that you can put a piece of paper over it and not worry about that paper catching on fire or even marking. I'm not advocating you spread your paper out on the range, but my point is that burner is low enough that you don't even mark that paper, right? No marks whatsoever. Another nice feature about that on this dual fuel range is they've added some halo lighting. This is a little light that's behind the red edge of the bezel, which lets you, just reminds you that this burner is still on. At this very low setting, it is sometimes hard to see that, especially with normal natural light. So this is just a reminder that that burner is on. Again, that particular feature is new to the new generation dual fuel range. So melting chocolate without a double boiler, holding delicate sauces like a hollandaise or as something, a cream sauce, for instance, an Alfredo sauce, or even just holding something as simple as tomato soup. On that low temperature, you can hold those items for a long time without worrying about the pan scorching or burning or building up anything on the bottom that would be more difficult to clean. So these dual stack burners, every configuration. Now the dual stack burner is consistent across all Wolf gas burners. That dual stack feature is the same. The controls are a little bit different on this new generation dual fuel range. In this particular configuration, I have 9,000 BTUs in that upper left corner, 20,000 up here, 18 and 15. And we're going to sear some cherry tomatoes and just let them sizzle a little bit. So I'm going to light this, put a little oil in there, and that'll continue while we're working on our griddle a little bit. So you get a chance to see how those burners work. Okay, let's talk griddle. Now our griddle surface, as I said, is a piece of carbon steel, and you want to treat it like a cast iron skillet. You're going to get it from the factory. It's going to have a pretty shiny surface, and it has a very light coat of mineral oil on there. You'll need to clean that off first. I'll go through all of that with ownership when you first get it. I just want to warn you, if you get it and we don't get to talk in the first couple of days, a little warm soapy water and clean that off. It's in your owner's manual. And then you'll want to season it like you would a cast iron skillet. We're going to heat it up a little bit. We're going to open the pores of the metal, put a little fat on there as it cools down, and we're going to do that 3 times. And what that'll do is it traps some of that oil in those pores, and that gives you this non-stick surface. And then over time, it will develop this darker patina. When you first season it, it'll probably have a nice light brown patina. And then by the time you get into it a little bit more, you'll get this beautiful dark coating. And I know that every corner of this is now non-stick, which is still important. So let's zoom in on that griddle surface. And then we're going to add some sea scallops to that and cook those so you can get a sense of how well it sears. And I just have, I'm sorry, you can't see these at all. I have some sea scallops here. Kelly's going to switch cameras at the end and we'll show you what the ingredients look like. The lighting in here just makes it really tough. All right. Even though it's non-stick, I am going to put a little bit of fat on there when searing something, just to give it a nice coating. If you can hear some sizzling going on, that's our tomatoes doing their char here. Now, because this is usable corner to corner, I'm going to try to illustrate cooking on both ends of this surface. So I'm going to add a scallop all the way back in the back corner. We'll do a couple back there. We'll do a couple in this front edge. And just for good measure, we'll do a couple in the middle. Because my point is, I want to show you how well this unit sears from edge to edge. So you can hear all that sizzling. One of the things you do want to make sure is that you preheat your griddle. The dual griddle will take about 15 to 18 minutes to heat the entire griddle. The smaller size, about 11 inches will take a few minutes less to preheat, but then you're good to go for the entire cooking time. You'll have that ability to cook on that surface. Now, it is all about breakfast, yes, but so much more. You will cook something on this griddle every single day as it falls into, once you start treating it like an infinite saute pan. Anything you can cook in a saute pan, we can cook on that surface. My tomatoes are moving along pretty quickly, so I'm going to turn them down a little bit. They're just going to sizzle a little bit and kind of add a little caramelization to them as they go. We can take a peek at that burner if you want. You can see those kind of doing their thing there in that skillet, little brown spots, a little char, a little pop. And I'm now down at the very bottom of the range on that burner. So our scallops are cooking. We've got our zucchini on the other end. I want to start talking about the ovens and how they're set up to cook. And then we'll finish these scallops up, and I'll actually move into an oven box so you can see what it looks like. I have some roasted carrots going in one of the ovens over there. So underneath your dual fuel, you'll end up with either a single oven in the 30 and the 36, or double ovens. In the 48, you have both a 18-inch oven as well as a full 30-inch oven. In the 60-inch range, you'll end up with two 30-inch ovens under there, all fully functioned with all the bells and whistles. They all have probe technology. They all have gourmet features to them. You can tell the oven what you're cooking, and it will give you a recommendation on which mode and which temperature, and all of that is just part of that. We're going to take a look at these controls in just a second, but I want to turn these scallops and see how we're doing on coating this. We put the back ones on first. I'll zoom back in on that griddle and kind of show you what that looks like. All right. Nice brown crust on those back there. You can see that little crusting there. Let's take a look at these front ones. Should have just as much crusting. There we go. Nice brown crust on those too. And you can see these are really coming up non-stick. And for scallops not to stick, it's super important. Now, these are dry pack scallops. The only thing you need to remember when you're buying scallops is make sure you ask them for dry pack scallops. Dry pack scallops do not have up to a 25% saline solution injected for freshness. I'm not sure about you, but I don't want seafood that's been injected with anything to be fresh. I just want fresh seafood. Kind of makes sense, but dry pack scallops will give you that beautiful brown crust and sear. Scallops that have been injected with the saline solution tend to steam and not sear, and you'll know it right away. If you're not sure whether they're dry packed or not, just ask who you're buying your fish from. They ought to be able to tell you that. You can get them frozen and dry packed, but more often they're fresh, and you'll find them that way. So our tomatoes are kind of breaking down here. Nice little caramelization to those. And our scallops are finishing up. So in your Wolf oven, there are, I'll show you the controls to this dual fuel range in the Wolf oven. Let's drop down and look at these controls. You end up with bezels. Now this particular one, because there are two ovens, I have two bezels, but all of the modes for the oven are listed around the edge of the bezel. And so you have bake and broil, roast, clean, warm. Now, some of these are not quite the same in the other model, the previous legacy model. But if you go to convection, for instance, to get to set the temperature, you just toggle the knob, and then the temperature shows up in the center of your knob for in terms of what temperature you're going to set that oven at. And then you hit start in the center of this screen. Now, I know you can't see this screen completely clearly, but your controls are right there. And then if you were going to set a probe on that oven, you would hit the word probe here. And then you have the ability to connect a probe and then set that probe temperature to whatever you want, still using the inside of this this gives you the display of what that probe is set at. So once you set it, it will display those on your screen, what the probe setting is, what the current probe is, and what the oven temperature is once it's fully heated. I'm going to turn it off so that oven doesn't heat up while we're standing here talking. Other modes that are on this include, and it's probably time to move to the inside of that oven so that we can see those modes. So I'm going to go over here. Underneath your dual fuel range, the oven you have is the exact same as our wall oven, which is an M series oven. Now, the previous model of this, the legacy model of this, used an E series oven. So this is slightly different, but most of the modes are the same. But this model has two pull-out full extension racks. They're curved in the back for a maximum amount of space. If you happen to have the 48-inch dual fuel range that has an 18-inch oven and a 30-inch oven, know that the 18-inch oven just has regular racks because of the size of it. But this extra capacity is gained because they moved the fan elements to the corners. In the very corner of the oven, there's what's called a column fan that runs from the top of the oven to the very bottom of the oven. And it has an embedded heat element in it. So it provides that very consistent heat on convection. Now, for instance, in this Wolf oven that is in your dual fuel range, there's a bake element under the bottom of the oven. There is a significantly powerful broil element on top. And then there's two elements in the fans of this oven. Now, if you happen to have one of the dual fuel legacy models, what you're going to find is you have rotary fans on the back wall, and those rotary fans have embedded heat element in it. So the mode of operation is very consistent with this one. It's just slightly different in where that air comes from. Now, if you're not currently using a convection oven, if your oven doesn't have convection, or you have chosen not to use it or hadn't had good results, this Wolf oven may change your mind on the whole functionality of convection ovens, because once you have two fans and the two fans are talking to each other, those two fans talking to each other, you end up with this really beautiful space of convective heat air, like convective heat curtains. It's constantly rotating the air in and out, and you end up with this complete chaotic air. So it's as warm and as even as it can be. You get enhanced browning, you get a little extra moisture retention. It's really, really a nice even. So if you're someone who likes to cook 3 racks of cookies at a time, convection is going to be the mode you want to use. There is a bake mode on here, and if you decide to do bake, that's great for middle of the oven baking, but you wouldn't want to put that all the way down on the bottom. If you do 3 racks and do bake 350, the bottom will burn 100% of the time, the top will be raw, and the middle will be somewhere in the middle. But if you're doing those multiple racks, I had a client who's doing 8 loaves of challah at the same time, and they had double ovens, obviously, but they were able to put 4 loaves in here, spaced apart, and get very, very even and consistent results using this particular oven. Now, one other additional word of warning: if you're someone who uses the broiler on a regular basis, note that this is a very powerful broiler, maybe more powerful than what you have used before. It has 3 broiler settings: broil 1, 2, and 3. And I would recommend the racks are numbered from the bottom 1 through 6, excuse me. If you're going to broil for the first time, I would start in position 4 until you get adjusted to the strength of that broiler. I had a customer who put their ribeye on the top shelf like they had always done in their previous oven, and then they sent me a picture of the fire that ensued, and they burned out the top of their oven. So start, if you're a broil person, in the middle of the oven until you adjust to that level of heat. Now, in addition to a bake element of broil mode, there's a couple of modes like roast and convection roast. And these modes, in the last page of your cookbook that comes with this oven, you get a nice cookbook. There's a nice picture of where all the heat is coming from in each of these modes. But convection roast is one of my favorite modes because you're going to get about 25% of the heat from the broil element, and then the rest of the heat's going to come from your fans. This is an excellent mode for roasting vegetables or roasting large cuts of protein because a little bit of top-down heat with that circulation of air just makes for the most even cooking surface that you can imagine in terms of productivity and the way that it stays even. Now, the probe in your dual fuel range attaches on the ceiling left-hand side of the oven. So there's a jack right here, and you can plug that in and use your probe. Now, all the parts of the probe are covered in silicone and are perfectly safe to use in an oven. They can touch the racks, they can touch a pan, not a problem. When you go to clean this probe, you want to make sure you just use a little, a warm soapy rag to do so. I wouldn't immerse this in liquid. I'm going to change my camera view and talk about this probe and how it operates a little bit, because it's a little bit easier to see over here. So the probe that comes with your dual fuel range is effective in measuring at the very end of this point. So this part needs to be covered, but this is where the actual temperature measurement comes. So you want to try to put this in the center of what you're trying to measure. The real benefit of using this probe is it's like any other thermometer, except I can see the displayed results on the outside of the range. So I can tell what's going on in the range while not opening the door, because every time you open that door, you burp off about 20 degrees and you change your cooking time if you're cooking by time. So it's important to know that thermometer. Second thing I would tell you is any chef who ever tells you they cook by time or smell or touch, that's BS. We use thermometers for everything. We need to temperature what's going on so we know the food is cooked. So putting this probe in place becomes pretty important. It's very difficult to probe through something this way and make sure you're in the center without leaving this exposed. So when you're thinking about probing a protein, think about coming in from the side. A chicken breast typically has a thin end and a thick end. You want to come in from this thin end, and now the probe is right in the thickest part of that piece, giving me an accurate reading. Something like a pork tenderloin or a beef tenderloin, this again is a really hard way to know you're in the center. So just shallow that angle down a little bit, come in from the side till the probe is completely covered. And this is in the end, the thickest part of the protein. But it can be used for more than that. You can probe casseroles, hot dishes, anything that you might need to know what that internal temperature is, you can probe inside those items. Even baked goods, a pumpkin loaf or a zucchini loaf or any of those, typically we want that nice brown crust on the outside, but if we pull it too early, you've all had one, at least I've had one, that had that little channel of undercooked dough and it collapsed in the top because I pulled it out too soon. So sticking the probe into your loaf for the last 10 minutes of baking, you can ensure that that is done completely in the center. So this is, yes, it's usable for proteins, and that comes to mind very quickly, but it's also usable in any sort of other food that you're just trying to keep track of what is the internal temperature, okay? Now, Wolf's commitment to low heat, like we had on the burners, continues in the oven by the ability to set it to a dehydration mode or to set it to a keep warm mode or proof. All three of those are somewhere between 125 degrees and lower. The dehydration is 125 degrees with the fans on. You can do that. They do sell a dehydration kit, which gives you a little bit finer mesh to keep food from falling through. The keep warm mode allows you, if you're done with something and you're trying to hold it while you finish another element of your dinner, it just becomes a warming drawer. And then the last one is proof. And proof is where you can get your bread dough an environment for which it can double in size. I saw there was a question.
Can you start the probe when the oven is cold before it's heated up?
The only thing you can't put the probe in the oven and heat it up by itself. If you put it in the food and then connect it, you absolutely can do that. And in your gourmet modes that are on there, many of them are going to tell you to insert the food right away and not preheat the oven. It's kind of an energy savings piece. The shift in your head is if my probe has to be in the food. That has to be first. It can't be exposed to the oven temperature because it will alarm before you ever get your food in there. But if the probe is in the food and connected, you can put it in because you're no longer cooking to time. You're now cooking to a doneness temperature. And I would be happy to provide you with doneness temperatures for most items if you have a question about it. Fish is one of those things. If it's a thick enough piece of fish in the oven, you can probe it. But often fish fillets or small pieces are not large enough to be able to take advantage of the probe, and you end up doing it. If you had a whole side, you could. So I hope that got your question there, but in the food, yes. In the cavity, no. All right. I want to touch on a couple of cleaning aspects of this because we're getting really close to plating our food. The one thing, my scallops came off while I was talking to you in that oven. So I do want to just scrape anything that's stuck on this griddle to the front. It's that easy. If I had any food items that stuck on there. Now, this is a bench knife, which is one of my favorite tools to use with the griddle. What's nice about it is it gives me a nice sharp edge. I wouldn't drag the corner across it, but you're not going to damage the griddle either way. You might take some of the seasoning off. And that seasoning is my best friend when it comes to keeping it nonstick. So I just took off any of the stuck food items there. Now we'll let that griddle cool a little bit and we'll clean it very quickly after we see your food, your plated food. So I'm going to kind of assemble this plate real quickly. We'll talk about it. And then Kelly is going to switch to another camera that actually works better with the light here. So you can see what this quick scallop plate looks like. Then we'll come back and talk cleaning tips as well as cleaning that griddle. You can switch cameras, Kelly. So we got our little pieces of zucchini plank here. Coming.
Okay, and so
We're going to put our scallops on here.
issue is, guys, is I can't spotlight this video. So if they just want to scroll over to the
Okay, yeah, scroll over to that and highlight it. Little roasted tomatoes on top. We got some pea shoots, some fresh herbs, and then today I have a little chimichurri vinaigrette. So we'll just do a little glaze on that. Then I have a few roasted carrots. Let's add. These came out of the dual fuel range. Okay, we got all our colors in today. Thank you for showing that, Kelly. And we're coming back to the full screen. There we are. Thank you. Thanks for showing that food. So you can see how quickly that meal came together using the pieces. It's very, very flexible, and you'll find yourself using all of them together. Let's talk a few cleaning tips. And when you get, and the only reason I want to do this, it's not the time for you to remember these, but I want to show you that we really do have, and Wolf has created a great cleaning reference for you. We want this range to continue to look as beautiful it is the day you put it in there. We want to show you what, just how easy and how much resources they provide for cleaning. I will send you a 3-page cleaning reference. It just has to do with how to clean every surface of a Wolf range. But one of the things people always look at this griddle and says, it's got so much. Am I gonna like having that in the middle? You really like how it cooks. And then in terms of how it looks, there's a couple of choices. It comes with a stainless steel cover or a cutting board as an option to fill this space when it's not in use. The biggest thing is you are going to get a little splatter as you cook on this into these grates, but it wipes up very simply. We like to use a Norwex cleaning cloth just to wipe that area. The burner wells themselves, the porcelain burner wells that are under the burners can really, and they're sealed. So if you've had a boil over, it'll hold all of that in there. But you can use Barkeeper's Friend on that. Let me highlight a few cleaning products that Wolf actually recommends here. These are, I can remember where I put them. Here, there we go. So there's a couple of things that Wolf recommends in terms of cleaning products. And I will go through these again. You don't need to remember. My whole point of sharing them here is just to show you that they're not a super complex cleaning regimen. They recommend products that are readily available in your grocery aisles or at your hardware store. And they end up being super easy to come by. The Barkeeper's Friend is going to be your primary use. I would use a blue scrubby as opposed to a green scrubby, and you can clean all of those surfaces, both the porcelain bed, you can clean the grates, you can clean the burner caps. And then they have, if you're going to use something on the stainless steel, it comes with a little stainless steel cleaner, but we like to use in a product as long as it has the word magic in it, it tends not to leave as much residue. This is just a citrus degreaser, which they often will reference as an easy way to degrease items. And then this is for heavy duty oven rack and grate cleaning. It's a product by Carbona. And you can get that more likely at the hardware store or Home Depot, or you can get it online, of course. But it's going to give you that deeper cleaning to the grates and the oven racks. Now, in terms of keeping this griddle clean, all we need to do is scrape the food off of it. And then once it's cooled a little bit, we're going to clean it with water. I'm going to use a little steam cleaning method for you. I didn't really get it very dirty today, but only the best for you here at Roth. We're going to use a little Perrier. You can use regular tap water, or you can choose to use bubble water. The reason I like to use a little bit of carbonated beverage, what it's going to do is provide you with the little bubbles will stick to food a little better, and they'll lift that stuff off the surface. So before I pour it on there, I'm going to zoom you in so you can see that surface a little clearer, and perhaps you'll see the little impurities bubbling off that surface. We seared scallops on there, so it's not, I didn't make a huge mess of it, but we still ought to see things that come to the surface during cleaning. You'll see these little white bands of impurities. And then you just want to scrape all of that into your tray in the front, just like that. Now, if you had some harder areas with stuck food, maybe you'll go back and work on those a little bit. I will take you through this whole cleaning regimen, which you can see. This is why I say you'll use it every day, because I can clean it faster than you can scrub a skillet, because it's now completely clean. I do want to add a little bit of fresh oil to it, and then use just a paper towel to rub that oil in, giving me back my beautiful shiny surface that I started with. It's now ready to be cooked on again. Now, again, this is not something you need to remember now. I'll take you through this entire process once you have this piece installed, but it is helpful to know how quick and easy it is to clean this piece. There's also a couple of things you should know about burning in your oven. If you get your oven installed and we haven't had a chance to connect, make sure you follow the instructions to give it a quick wipe out and then a low burn in for about an hour or so, just to remove any manufacturing residue and dust. It's not a hard process, but it's a process that really helps eliminate those things that are in your range when it comes from the factory. All right, we're sitting right about 11:45. I want to open it up to any questions that you may have of information I haven't covered, but also know you have the ability just to send me an email if you have a more detailed question. One thing I think I talked about in terms of configurations, just know 30, 36, 48, and 60. Once you get above the 30, you can start adding a piece in the middle. The 36 comes with 6 burners or 4 burners of char or 4 burners and a griddle. In the 48, you have lots of flexibility. In the 60, you have lots of flexibility. So if you got any questions about which particular pieces are available in that cooktop, just let me know. Super important to remember that the functionality and flexibility of the dual fuel range makes it really like no other, with all those possible combinations on top in terms of cooking with gas and the reliability, accuracy, probe modes, connectivity, all of that in the ovens just make it the really premier piece in our line of ranges. Any questions at this point? I will be happy to send a link of this recorded section to you at the end. Once I get it this afternoon, I'll probably send that out to you. If you have any follow-up questions, I'll attach the cleaning reference to that video as well. If you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out and ask me. Kelly and I are both here in the showrooms most days. We're here just to provide enough information, especially if you're considering this in your kitchen selection. Have a great day, folks. Look forward to seeing you soon.